Go.
Good morning, good evening, or whatever time you're watching this. Welcome back to my TED Talk. I'm Allison Thomas, your host, and today we are going to be learning about quicksand. So, John Mulaney, in case you don't know him, is a hilarious stand-up comedian, and he has several specials on Netflix. One of these specials is called New in Town, and I would like to show you a clip from New in Town.
But what's nice is that some of the things I was anxious about don't bother me at all anymore. Like, I always thought that quicksand was going to be a much bigger problem than it turned out to be. Because if you watch cartoons, quicksand is like the third biggest thing you have to worry about in adult life. Behind real sticks of dynamite and giant anvils falling on you from the sky. I used to sit around and think about what to do about quicksand. I never thought about how to handle real problems in adult life. I was never like, oh, what's it going to be like when relatives ask to borrow money? Now I've gotten older, not only have I never stepped in quicksand, I've never even heard about it. No one's ever been like, hey, if you're coming to visit, take I-90, because I-95 has a little quicksand in the middle.
I think about this video way too often. It lives in my mind completely rent-free. But like John Mulaney said, we are probably not going to experience quicksand much in our adult lives. But that doesn't mean that it's not useful information to know, especially considering quicksand occurs more in natural life than we would ever think. So this information might be useful to you one day, and maybe it'll be completely useless. I guess we'll find out. So what is quicksand? We see it all the time in TV shows and movies, but it's always portrayed as like this type of sand or soil that you get caught in, but that's not particularly true. According to the Britannica article, quicksand is a state in which saturated sand loses its supporting capacity and acquires the character of a liquid. It is less a type of sand as much as a state that sand can enter. Dirk Cadell and his associates say in their article, Living Quicksand, that quicksand occurs when groundwater pressure, gravity, and air mix with sand to give sand, make it want to concave in on itself, to collapse, especially if met with outside pressure. It's kind of like a game of Jenga. You know, it can stand on its own, it can support itself, but once you hit those pressure points and add too much stress to it, boom, it collapses. So where would you typically find quicksand? In movies and TV shows, I found from the ones I watched as a kid, like Indiana Jones, that they were often portrayed in jungles, but I never really knew where they were found more often. According to the Britannica article, quicksand is usually found near bodies of water, like the hollow at a mouth of a river, or near a stream, or the pools at the beach where there's water as well as sand and dense clay that prevents permeability. What happens when someone gets trapped in quicksand? We always believe this myth that quicksand will completely bury and suffocate you, especially if you start to struggle. But this isn't really true. According to a National Geographic article by Nicholas Bacalar, humans are half as dense as quicksand, and therefore we are more prone to float upon it. And if we do struggle and therefore sink some, we normally won't sink more than past our waist because of this dense difference. According to Living Quicksand by Cadalor and his associates, there's also the depth of the quicksand basin to consider, which usually doesn't exceed 1 meter, and therefore we wouldn't have any reason to sink past our waist. There are times in which they can get very deep, like 2 meters, in which case we have to be very careful. But these instances are very rare. So if you do ever get caught in quicksand, stay calm because you know that you're most likely not going to sink very far. Another article that Kadar and his associates wrote is a micromechanical model of collapsing quicksand. And this shows what happens when quicksand meets a dense object, like a human. So let's say this dot is a person. meeting the quicksand, and that person's struggling. So the quicksand, because of the stress, is going to form a column and a tunnel for that object to go through, and then it's going to collapse in on itself. As you can see, it is a lot denser in this collapse state than it was to begin with, and this state is completely irreversible, which is why it is so hard to escape quicksand. So if you ever are caught in quicksand, the biggest thing to remember is to stay calm. Okay? It is hard to get out of because of those things, but not impossible. Another thing to remember is if you have friends or family around with you, is to not get them to pull you out. Because according to the article written by Bacalar in National Geographic, it won't end well. Because of the stress that quicksand puts on you and the stress from them trying to pull you out, you could get torn in half. Fun, right? So just because it's difficult to escape doesn't mean it's impossible. What you have to do is you have to wriggle your legs and slowly create space within the quicksand so that water can flow in and penetrate and make it easier for you to escape. It is a slow process, but it's not impossible. So in conclusion, you may never use this information, but that doesn't mean that there's not going to be someone out there who might need it. So, even if you don't use this information, I do hope that it someday comes up in trivia night or something. These are my citations. Thank you for your time.